the invitation of Doug McCall. Doug will be capturing our notes and our conversations and be sending us a summary email after this call. Perhaps just as a little bit of a background, the purpose of this call is to discuss the possibility of the formation of a global network of deans of education. In the last few months, after the World Education Research Association meeting where I met with Doug McCall in Cape Town, we started playing around with the idea of creating a global network of deans of education with multiple purposes, but primarily to inform and impact on the global education discourses that is ongoing. I think you have all seen the email from Doug, where he refers to the UN 2030 Sustainable Development Goals, the OECD priorities, the work of the Education Workforce Initiative under the leadership of Gordon Brown, and then, of course, also the UNESCO work in the Institute of Statistics, and several other systems, work of the World Bank, etc., where we felt that there's a real need for deans of education who actually straddle several worlds in education and have unique points of views and perspectives, but for deans of education to have that impact globally. So we started to explore a little bit the existing deans networks. This is an ongoing process, of course, because there's already existing deans networks, many of them regional, some of them state networks or provincial networks, some of them countrywide networks, depending on the region of the world. But there's no forum where the deans of the world connect globally to connect with the SDGs. So that's the idea about it broadly. So it will be a very open. It's not a fixed agenda meeting. It's a very open discussion to throw around ideas and to perhaps get a little bit of a glimpse towards the future of whether this is something we should be pursuing, and then take it from there. I don't know, Doug, if you perhaps want to add to that.
Sure, and just very quickly, just to express our interest in seeing a global voice for deans of education emerge. I chair a committee called the FRESH Partnership. It's a committee of UN agencies and organizations such as Education International representing teachers, as well as organizations such as Save the Children and so on. And we're very much interested in having educator voices at that table. We have the teachers and another large group, ASCD, which has membership in 30 countries. So we're very interested in encouraging the deans of education to be part of that table, and also be able to respond to initiatives that are beyond health and social development into other areas. And one of those is again, I think an area of shared interest is the work that's being done by the Education Commission on the education workforce. I think that's very relevant to deans of education, and so I'm very hopeful that we can see an informal network emerge from this conversation, and thereby allowing your voices to be heard more clearly at the various global tables and initiatives.
Thank you very much, Doug. I thought it may be, because this is some of us have had previous discussions before, but it may be a good idea for all of us to just introduce ourselves to the group. Can I start off, perhaps? Okay, I think I'm going to jump in. I'm Irma Elof. I'm a former Dean of Education at the University of Pretoria in South Africa. I served 2 terms. During those terms, I founded the Africa Deans of Education Forum in 2013, which I found to be a very, once we found it, it was a very energetic network of deans across the continent, even though there were many regional barriers, because Africa is a very large continent with 1 billion people, many different language groupings, and there seemed to be a very real need for that, and ADEF has been going on since then. We meet once a year at different universities around the globe, and I'm hoping that we will see something of that same energy be infused into another network, but at the global level. So that's me, Irma. Anyone else wants to jump in?
I can jump in.
Sure.
Hello, everyone. I'm Lynn Gangone. I'm the president and CEO of the American Association of Colleges for Teacher Education. We represent over 800 institutions of higher education across the country, either colleges of education or teacher education programs. We were founded as a dean's group, and we still have many deans who are engaged in our work, as well as now we have faculty and others who are dedicated to elevating the profession of teachers and teacher education in the United States.
Thank you very much, Lynn. Anyone else?
Hello, everyone. I'm David Smith from the University of Aberdeen in Scotland, UK, and very involved in teacher education, but also within my school we do community learning and development as well, through to master's level learning, PhD, EdDs. Part of a network of Deans of Education nationally in Scotland. So really interested to hear about what's going on in different countries and where you actually have networks, so either continental networks or networks across much larger countries. Scotland is obviously a very small country. We're only 5 million people, and but a lot of the policy currents, I think we maybe, if you want to look at it, we get the policy wind from elsewhere, and obviously the OECD is very much globally engaged, as it is in Scotland. So just looking forward to hearing other people's experiences and to hearing ways in which the experience here I can reflect on both nationally and internationally and see the work that's going on elsewhere.
Thank you very much.
Chinaka Domwachuku. I serve as Associate Dean at the School of Education in Azusa Pacific University in Southern California. I actually got involved in this with Doug as in my role as the chairman for the AACTE Global Diversity Committee. Our committee has a desire to extend our engagement with diversity in education beyond what we're doing currently in looking at what schools are doing. We wanted a global engagement, and in the process, we came across Doug and others and became part of this workforce. So we're excited to have a place and a voice in this conversation.
Thank you very much, Chinaka.
So it's Michael Owen here. So I'm the Dean of Education at Brock University in St. Catharines, Ontario, which is equidistance between Toronto and Buffalo. We have much better climate than both of those. And we have superb wines as well, which is a benefit. So I'm probably here because of my role on the Association of Canadian Deans of Education. I'm one of the executive members of that group, and I'm also a member of the Ontario Association of Deans of Education. So in Canada, we have approximately 70 teacher education programs, and about an equal number, slightly fewer faculties of education, because some of our programs are buried within schools of social sciences and the smaller programs, or other types of professional schools. So we're very, very much interested in how we're in both of my hats on both of my associations, interested in this activity. I believe that I met Lynn at AERA last spring. I'm not sure, Lynn, if it was you that I met.
It was.
And at that point, we had talked about the upcoming AERA meeting, which will be in Toronto, as a perhaps an opportunity for deans of education, certainly between Canada and the US, but also potentially globally, to get together to talk about how we might advance our common cause around teacher education. But beyond that as well, because many of our faculties of education do much more than teacher education. We are involved at my institution, we're involved in Aboriginal teacher education, Aboriginal adult education, higher education, early childhood education. So it's actually a fairly broad faculty, even though teacher education happens to be our largest program. So I guess from my side, I'd be very much interested in how this network might represent the breadth of what we do within faculties of education. Really the lifelong and life-wide approach to education that many of us promote within our faculties and indeed within our research. So I do, and by the way, I'd be happy to work with the Associated Canadian Deans of Education and the Ontario Associated Deans of Education to try to coordinate something at the upcoming AERA meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, I think the Canadian Deans have done some excellent work, especially around the accords on particular fields. I've read some of those accords, which I think had a very positive impact.
Yes, and those are still they're constantly under review, or at least cyclical review, and so we think that they're very positive.
Yeah, very good documents. Okay, thank you very much, Michael.
All right, Irma, this is John.
Okay, hi, John.
This is John Fischetti. I'm the Dean of Education at the University of Newcastle in New South Wales, Australia. My accent will probably make it East Coast US, but been there for 5 years. I'm also the president of the New South Wales Council of Deans of Education, which is 14 universities in New South Wales. That's the largest state in Australia, and with Sydney as the hub that many of you had the pleasure to visit, I'm sure. I'm also a member of the Australian Council of Deans of Education, which is 39 universities in the country, and the same in terms of access to the whole network as we would proceed with this work. I think the reason I may have gotten dug in Irma's email is related to an organization I started very loosely about 3 years ago. We call it the Global Learning Equity Network, a group of School of Education that's just emerging. It's not exclusive. In fact, only it's my time that's kept us from expanding more largely, but universities across the world who are possibly being hamstrung by the policies of ministers of education, which look to accountability and assessment and testing as the answers for equity and overcoming poverty. And by doing so, I've created standards which are remarkably alike in the world, but we behave as if they're different. We operate in our silos. But if you look around the world, they were all written by very similar high-paid consultants and are just rotated around with different emphases based on the language and the spelling. Many of those have now meant we respond to accreditation and policies that are narrow-minded and don't focus on learning-centered approaches, but much more on teacher-centered or on test scores as opposed to children and improving their lives. And we've decided that across the world we could create horizontal conversations which allow us to use the power of an international conversation and international frameworks we've established to really look at whether teacher education is in fact meeting the needs of children and society rather than of policymakers and ministers who tend to rotate in and out of making teacher education the #1 problem in the world for some reason. So anyway, we've got this little network. We're happy to join it because it's just a loose group of great people. And we would also like to propose a research component. So this allows us to share what we're learning about the impact of teacher education, not just an advocacy group, but surrounding it with the Sustainable Development Goals is fantastic. The idea of the international network is timely, and whatever I can do to help support it down under, I'm happy to do.
Fantastic. Thank you, John. All right. Doug, do you want to go?
Just sure, briefly, as I said before, I work with the International School Health Network. We're associated with Simon Fraser University, the Center for Educational Policy and Leadership. Dan Leach, who I work with there, was not able to make this call, but is very interested. And Dan used to work with Lynn's organization, I believe, in his past. So he's got a good sense of some of the association type activities that might be relevant. So our interest together is on health and social development in education, and we'll be working on that together. But I'm very pleased to see I think we have 4 or 5 continents here represented, and you have all have connections to the various national and regional groups, which is very important because I'm new at the international level, but one thing I have learned is, well, 2 things. One is it is better to work through a network of networks, and 2, it takes time. It takes time for people to respond, and so I think we're suffering a bit from the short notice that it was my fault. I just couldn't get enough people identified in time for this call, but I think as we move forward, if we move a little more slowly and if we move online, we'll be able to broaden the participation. But I'm really pleased to see the regional and national associations represented on this call. It's really good. I think that's the best beginning we could have.
Yes, I agree. That's fantastic. All right. Okay, so broadly, it seems from this group that we think that this is a network of networks of deans of education seems to be a good idea, just from the introductory comments that everyone has been making. Am I correct in assuming that?
Yes.
Okay. Then ideas on what do you think would take this forward? What would serve the needs of deans that will serve the needs of the education sector?
So Irma, it's Michael here. One of the things that I need to do on my side, of course, would be to take back this proposal about a network of networks to the two groups that I belong to. It's actually, the timing is actually quite positive. In 10 days, the Canadian Association of Deans of Education will be meeting and for our annual meeting. And I certainly will be briefing the executive and that group on it. And also the Association of Ontario Deans of Education will meet, I think it's next week or something. And so what I'll do is I'll write up a little report from them to see how they as 2 groups might be interested in participating, at least formally or semi-formally. But also I would like to, and again, kick out the offer here to think about the potential of a face-to-face meeting at AERA in April.
Okay.
Irma, this is Lynn.
Yes. Yeah.
So a couple of things. Michael, nice to hear your voice again. And I actually just finished our AACTE Board of Directors meeting where I shared this effort with them. And they are very interested in AACTE being a part of this work. Additionally, I am now on the road meeting with what I call our dean alike groups in the U.S. So our public sector deans, our research deans, and our independent or private college deans. And so in each of those conversations, I will be bringing up this idea. I also, and this is part of the challenge I think that we have in terms of a splintering of efforts, is that I've become aware of an effort that actually some of our deans are involved with that's being put forward by one of the normal schools in China, the East China Normal University.
Yes.
And I don't know if any of you are aware of this, but again, they are bringing in participants from China, including Hong Kong and Taiwan, Singapore, Australia, New Zealand, India, UK, US, Canada, Finland, Colombia, and South America. And they are calling themselves a Global Deans Network. So I am trying to see if there is some way that we can have some overlap, but I will certainly report back in. I'm working with a couple of the deans here in the U.S. who are involved in this forum, and I'll report back, but clearly let them know some of the work that we're doing. And finally, I would say, in answer to your question, I think the first place to start would be if individuals like Michael, myself, and others, who are affiliated with particular networks, that we actually start getting that list together, right? I mean, I think I had promised in the last call to start to put together a list of entities around the world that were doing this kind of work. And so I think first kind of getting a sense of the landscape is very important. And then finally, Michael, I do support very much the idea of gathering at AERA. I have a fair number of my deans in attendance at AERA, and I think it would be a great opportunity for us to facilitate some in-person dialogue. So I'd be happy to help with that as well.
Okay, yes, thank you. There's East China Normal University. This is not the one are they meeting in Hong Kong in November?
No, this is different, Irma. This is I'm still trying to get a handle on it. Apparently, okay. There is a faculty member here in the United States who is a Dr. Zhenyao Yun, who is he's Dean of the Faculty of Education at East China. There's Dr. Rick Ginsburg, who's a member of ours at the University of Kansas, and then there is a faculty member who is a professor at the University of Kansas who has connections back to East China Normal. So there are about 6 to 8 American deans who are attending that meeting, as well as deans from China. I'm just trying to look through my notes. And I'm happy, part of what I'll do instead of taking time on this call is why don't I write up something on this and get it to all of you. And that way you can have a sense of the scope of their work.
Okay, thank you very much. That would be very helpful.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
So Irma, it's Michael. I apologize. I have to I have a faculty meeting that begins in 4 minutes, and so I need to run off to that. But this has been great, and I look forward to the follow-up notes that Doug will be doing. And I'll do a follow-up with you about AERA.
Okay, that would be great, because I think it's important that we keep the momentum for this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks.
Let me ask if it's possible for Doug to share with the rest of us the notes you're taking, as well as the goals and expectations for this group, so that just as Lynn was speaking, in our different little networks, we can begin to give people more, a clearer information as to what the goals and aspiration of this organization is. I'm part of the Association of Independent Deans in California, and this is mostly private universities. So I will be glad to share this information with them. I can also share their email networks with you for further future contacts. But it would be nice if we have some kind of talking notes that we can use when we're having a conversation with them.
Yes, I think Doug makes excellent notes after conference calls like this. So I think you will be having it shortly.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm speaking on your behalf, Doug, but
no.
I've experienced all the other calls. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine, and it is important that we keep the momentum going, and a set of notes is a good way of doing that. I also took the liberty of turning on the recording button to so that people can go to listen to the whole discussion if they want.
Yes.
And so often notes doesn't capture the full depth of the discussion. So we'll make that available. And in that
Okay.
regard, I thought I'm not a technology person, but I do like to use technology. I offered the possibility of just creating a very small 1 or 2 page website where that recording and a few other things could be posted, along with maybe a little dialogue box where people can share thoughts in a way that is more. It's email's good, but it's easier if it's posted where everybody can see what everybody's saying. And so I thought I would do that after this call, and then allow everybody on the line to be able to edit that website and move it forward that way. A very small thing, just really a business card kind of thing that would be, I think, helpful in moving forward. And
I think that would be fantastic.
another little technology thing we use often is you probably all use Doodle, the meeting device where you're setting up a meeting. That's always so much fun, but it does allow for the creation of a sign-up list. And so I thought we would open that up on that little website to be able for people to sign up and then get on the email list as well. So something very simple and moving forward. But if we could, and we don't have to do this today, we can do it by email, is I tried to put together a little statement, and I see already based on the comments thus far that it needs to be revised. I think the notion of the breadth of what is done in faculties needs to be better captured. I think Michael's comment, and then also bringing in stronger the notion of equity. I think that's another thing that needs to be included. I tried to on that first page, and was really begged and borrowed from a couple of different sources. Kind of a philosophy on that first page showing on your screen. Just what are the sort of essential values or purposes of a network like this. I'm going to go to the next page. Just the agenda of potential topics that is current, very current. And so those are the kinds of things that a network like this could address. With a word of caution, in my experience, and we're a very small volunteer-based network, it really requires someone, either a national association, a regional association, or a volunteer to really take the lead on these kinds of things. But I think if there is interest within the network of networks, then getting someone to follow and track and bring back these kinds of issues is the best way to go.
Yeah.
I think there are a couple of urgent items that are there, or a little bit later on in the document. But if people are comfortable with that as kind of a scope of the kinds of things that happen at the global level that a network of networks could be responsive to, and almost more in helping faculties be aware of these things, that as I think John or Michael said, these things, the wording of these standards or wording of other documents, it's amazing how similar they are as they come down from, or come around, maybe not down, come around the world. So it's very helpful if people get an early warning sign as to what seems to be developing around the world. And so that's, I think, one of the best values of a network, is that kind of thing. That third page on your screen is really just a kind of the different roles that a network of networks could play, recognizing that these issues are dealt with at the national or regional or even state or provincial level. So it's probably better to, as the network moves forward, is if someone has done some really good work on an issue like showing on the screen, that could be shared globally rather than redoing it. That's an efficient way of operating, and it also allows that group or that individual to take a leadership role. And the last slide is sorry for the really small type, but it's in the document that you all received, is really an agenda of some topics. There's two that are quite urgent that I would note. One is the meeting that Irma is attending in Jamaica in November. It is a UNESCO Teacher Education Task Force that I think you're very fortunate to have that connection already made, And so if Irma can be the liaison and bring that back to this group, I think that's a really good
Gladly.
good thing to do. And therefore you've already got a way into the UNESCO processes, and they're my experience is that all the UN agencies are very large and diffuse, and so getting an avenue into a group like UNESCO is very important. And the other one that is quite important, quite urgent rather, is the one being led by Gordon Brown, the Education Commission. They are looking at teacher shortages, and the need is great. There's going to be significant teacher shortages around the world, particularly in low-resource countries. But they are looking for, it seems that they could be looking for some stopgap measures of trying to get teachers trained very quickly. And I think all of you have lived through that experience in the past. And so I think there needs to be a response to that. I did share a set of notes from the documents that I'm receiving as being on their advisory committee. There seemed to be quite a scant look at what teacher education faculties do, and I suggest I'm talking with them later. I think it's next week. I'm going to suggest that they need to do some homework on what teacher education looks like around the world, perhaps by different contexts, because I don't think they're really getting that fact base in front of them as they start to move towards writing a report next fall, and or next next October, I think, is when it comes out, and it could be very not damaging, but could be very concerning if they don't do their homework before they start to do that. And so I was going to suggest to them that one of the fact-finding exercises they do is find out what's going on in the faculties around the world, and then and maybe even fund somebody to do that legwork. And if this group would be willing to be the organization or the network that moves that forward, then that would be very helpful. And if I could make that suggestion to them, I think they need to have those facts before them as they start to conclude what they're looking at. But there are other,
agree with that.
And then there are other initiatives and so on that we could look at. So if people are reasonably comfortable with that document we received, we can edit that and post it on the website for further comment, and it can evolve as we move forward, as you move forward.
I would be comfortable with that.
That's a good way forward.
Yeah, I think that's great, Doug. Thank you so much. I think that this can be wordsmithed to a certain level, and there are different ways I think we describe some of the work in our various countries and constituencies, but fundamentally this is really well done, and we're in. So thank you.
Great. And we can even include it in, as I say, it'll probably evolve as the network moves forward. But I think it's very important to have kind of a philosophy, a brief understanding of roles, and a couple of good issues or projects that help people come together. And I do want to add, and it's something we've done a lot in our networks, and it's the idea of meeting at large groups, at large conferences that are already existing. It's a great strategy to have side meetings at those things. AERA is one, and there's probably a few of those around the world that if different members of the network could take advantage of it and maybe host a conversation, and that way you can have face-to-face conversations while continuing to use the web as a vehicle for a lot of activity.
Doug, I have a question. Irma, you had asked earlier about I think it's the December meeting that Lynn Goodwin is pulling together in Hong Kong. Are you going to that? Is that invitational, or can we just attend?
It's invitational, but I think it's easy for me to send her an email if anyone wants to go. That network was started in St. Petersburg, I think 3 years ago. I attended the first one, but that was they particularly inviting faculties of education who are highly ranked it's a ranking meeting. So they invite the those schools of education or faculties of education. I think in the top 500 in the world. So that's what I know. I spoke to Lynn about this a while ago, it's the first time that she will be hosting it. I think it's rotating a little bit between different institutions.
Mm-hmm.
So she wasn't, she's formerly from Columbia. I suppose you know.
Yes.
Her.
Yes.
She was also interested to see what the work of the network is since it's the first time that she will be hosting them themselves, but primarily it's for rankings.
So the other thing I wanted to make sure I shared is that Lynn is also a part of this convening with East China Normal. So Irma, it might be a good thing for you to check in with her if you could,
okay.
Kind of, we know that ACTE deans are attending this, and maybe she can just give you some more context as well, because I think that we want to make sure we're collaborating. And so she may be a good point person. There's someone on my board who also will be in attendance. He's the dean of the School of Education at Michigan State University. And so I'm kind of working through Dr. Robert Floden. And so if you can talk to Lynn and I can keep talking to Bob, we can make sure we're on the ground with understanding what's happening with this group as well.
Okay, gladly. I'll do that.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Anything else? I think, Doug, you gave us some very good points on getting it, moving this process forward, and I think we have more clarity on some of the issues that came up during our previous discussion. But I think setting up a website, would be a very good next step for us in terms of starting to grow the network even further.
Okay, and also maybe mapping out. Lynn, thank you for that offer. My estimate of the number of individual institutions around the world is probably around 5,000. And so we've just scratched the surface of reaching out to the individual institutions. But I'm willing to keep working on that because it fits with another project I'm doing in health and social development. But I need to find the faculty members working on health and social development. So once you're into that faculty list, pulling out the dean's name is just as easy as the other name.
Mm-hmm.
So I can continue to work on that and then build a list that we can approach individually once we have a little more. I think we're getting a sense that a statement like was circulated, putting it on a website and start to work on some activities is the way to move forward, and just gradually expand the circle.
For me, there's two things. We need to probably discuss the way we build regional representativity in the network, and that's a critical step very early on. So we need to look at Asia at the moment, I think, and we need to look at South America at the moment, and perhaps even Europe to some extent. So regional representativity would be for me a priority, and then we probably also need to have a discussion on whether it will be network membership to this or whether there will also be opportunities for individuals to choose to contribute on this forum.
Mm-hmm.
Or whether they would only be able to speak through their networks.
I think we can think about that, right?
Yes, I think we should probably percolate that a little bit. I'm always leaning towards more flexibility, but we need to think about the consequences of our decision on that.
Yeah, there might be, just based on our experience, two ways of going about that. One is to really build on what does exist, which is the national networks and regional networks that do exist. Because that's the best way of having the capacity to reach out quickly.
Yes.
And I think that's the essential structure. Not that structure is almost too strong a word, but also allowing for individuals, either individual institutions or even retired deans or deans who are about to be appointed, who are interested in, who could play a kind of a role on a particular issue or project or activity or theme, and let them participate and bring it back to the network of network structure. That way you're capturing the volunteerism of individuals, but also recognizing that the best way of making decisions and talking to each other or communicating with each other is through the networks that do exist.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Doug, I have a question about the website in terms of what you're thinking, because it's not. What I'm trying to think of is the following. We have staff at our association. We're not a ton, but we do have some members of our team, and there's actually a wonderful faculty member who's joining us as an assistant vice president for all of our teacher ed and ed prep work, who is also very keen on international work, and I'm probably going to get her involved in this. But I'm wondering if we could do something at AACTE that's part of our webpage that could be utilized by our burgeoning group here. And I'd be happy to, maybe offline, Doug, you can tell me some ideas you have about what that might look like, and I can see if I can have one of my team members here start to build something for us.
Well, just to pick up on that, the latter half is really of interest. I was thinking that an independent website needs, like a business card needs to be created, not much more than that.
Got it.
But and it's easily done. We use the Weebly platform. It's a really easy, cheap. You just buy a domain name and then you can start a website. It's very quick and easy. But that eventually needs to be edited and managed. And so if you have a staff person who is able to do that, it would be great to have him or her take on that role, and just have the, and I don't think, again, going to our experience, need to be careful not to create a website that is in any way duplicating or competing with others. It is simply, a way of having an independent place for people to go to, where they can find out what's going on within the network of networks, and then and obviously linkages back to all the existing networks as well. So real simple, small, but it would be great to have someone who could actually take over the editing of that. And again, the technology permits that to happen very quickly.
Yeah, well, we'll take it one step at a time. I just wanted to sort of throw that out there as an option, maybe for the future. Okay.
Yeah, I think so. Or one of the things that we try to do hard in our work in school health promotion is to link up with websites who have a lot of content.
Right.
So that's the key is people will go. I think people who are on the web, and your folks will have less time than researchers per se, but because you're all doing administrative stuff. But I think you need to recognize that most people have a couple of favorite websites they go to, and linking those together is the best way, rather than trying to create a new website that everybody's going to. It's really trying to keep with that idea of a network of networks philosophy.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
All right. Any more comments?
Irma, I wanted to offer that Doug proposed a little while ago that we might pick a couple of topics. You might not have meant it that way, Doug, but like, for example, the impending shortage of highly qualified teachers around the world, that if we chose that as a starting point, and I don't know that we will, but I have a couple hours of a research assistant. Whenever we got to the point that we were collecting from each other the best information we had or the best ideas we had to put something out there, whatever that was, a synthesis or a position, whatever, a collection of the status of the world.
Idea.
I could offer some help to provide that synthesis where we could feed her, and others of you may, but let me know, and we could get going on a topic that would be politically correct, but also really important and give us a chance to work on something whenever we get to that point.
Okay, thank you. Just checking, was this David saying this? Hello?
Hello?
Hi.
I think that might have been John, but I'm not sure.
Oh,
It was,
okay,
I mean,
John.
certainly,
Was it
I can
John?
certainly
Okay.
hear it. Sorry.
Yeah.
That
You
was
certainly
John.
hear
Sorry,
it. So
Okay, thanks,
sorry
John.
about that.
No worries. Yes, I think that's a great suggestion. Thank you very much for that offer. All right. More questions or comments?
Just picking up on John's idea, I think that's excellent, and I can try to weave that into the conversation with the folks on that Education Workforce Initiative. If I can point to someone who can take the lead for this network, and I think they may still have some budget left too. Maybe they can even purchase some work. So they should be doing this work, I would think, as part of their mandate. But I'll check that out. I'm not sure how much budget they have left. They have a number of researchers working on different issues as part of that task. But if they have a little more money, they should do a fact-finding thing on what's going on in the faculties.
Okay. All right. Okay, thank you for that. Can we then start wrapping up this meeting? I take the silence as a yes. I think from all of us, Doug, I would like to express my appreciation for you for keeping the momentum on this via the emails, and also finding a time for us to have these discussions. As I gathered from you that there were several other people who also wanted to participate, but their schedules did not allow them to participate in the call. But I think the website idea will actually bypass that to some extent, so that we can have another platform where we can have contributions to this broader discussion of creating a network of networks of deans of education.
That's great. And one other suggestion I've been replying to people, as especially in Asia and the Pacific, is perhaps moving this meeting time around. There's no good answer, but moving it to a different time so that Asia and the Pacific can participate, I think is important as well.
Yes.
So we can maybe you could look at scheduling. I don't think I think a 3 or 4 meetings a year is the kind of thing you might be thinking about, but maybe with different time zones being favored in those 3 or 4 meetings.
Yes, that's very good. It's good to be sensitive to that. Yes, I agree. Okay. All right. Then thank you very much, everyone, for your contributions today. I look forward to